Once upon a time.
Ooh, I love a good story. What's this week's story?
You're going to have to listen to find out.
Welcome to the Garden Angelus, where we talk about flowers, veggies, and all the best dirt. I'm Dee Nash from Guthrie, Oklahoma, where I garden on 7.5 acres out in the country.
And I'm Carol Michael from Indianapolis, Indiana. I have a suburban garden measured in square feet, about 1/3 of an acre, 15,000 square feet.
We call ourselves Garden Angelus because we are evangelists for gardening. We love gardening and we want you to love it too.
Yes, we do. And we aren't afraid to spill the beans and tell all of our gardening secrets, the good, the bad, and even the ugly. But that's enough of who, what, when, where. Let's move on to this week's episode. Good morning, Dee.
Good morning, Carol. It is frosty on I was going to say pumpkin, but pumpkins are long gone. It is frosty on the New Year's baby today. Woo!
It is very frosty, but here I heard a little bird chirping this morning very early around dawn, and the sun is trying to shine off and on. So even though it's below freezing, can't complain. It's winter.
No, it's winter and it's sunny outside, and Oklahoma needed to have some winter. So I'm really glad we are. So tell me about your garden, if there is any.
Well, because it's now cold and it's going to stay cold for a while, I think my bragging days about snowdrops and Christmas roses and violas left over from the fall, I think those bragging days are coming to an end. So I have to brag about stuff in the sunroom.
There you go. In my garden, I am keeping it alive, my indoor garden, which is my garden in the house and my garden out in the greenhouse. And we had quite the cold snap, so I watered everything in the greenhouse ahead of time because when all that heat comes on, it dries everything out. And also I watered my whole entire garden before the cold snap, but then it rained. So I didn't have to really water, but I didn't know it was going to do that. It rained a lot harder than they thought it was going to.
We got quite a bit of rain New Year's Day, I think. Yeah, New Year's Day. We got quite a bit of rain.
We got snow.
We didn't get snow. We had a little tiny bit yesterday morning, but here in Indianapolis, I wouldn't call it a snowfall at all.
Right. We got snow and I probably got about an inch, and there's still a little bit out there because it's been so cold, but that's going away.
Right. And I have a Lily of the Valley report.
All right. What is it?
It's doing nothing so far.
Hey, I have a question. How's your oxalis? Mine has started to grow.
Mine has not started to grow, but yours is sitting out in that greenhouse and
it's warm.
I don't know. Mine has not started to grow, but I dug mine up and replanted in other pots. So maybe I ruined it.
Oh, I doubt it. So somebody contacted me. Robin contacted me on Instagram, and this is an update from last week's post where we used a bunch of Hal Borland quotes, and we were joking about how we didn't know anything Hal Borland had written. Well, it turns out Hal Borland was quite prolific.
Yes, I looked it up. She shared some information. He wrote over 30 books.
Yep.
Including the 1963 best-selling novel called When the Legends Die. And then nature classics, This Hill, This Valley, which I now am reading on my phone, Hill Country Harvest, An American Year, Beyond Your Doorstep, and High and Wide and Lonesome.
But even more important to our particular thing, he wrote a weekly nature editorial for the Sunday New York Times. And he was also a longtime columnist for the Pittsfield, Massachusetts newspaper, the Berkshire Eagle. So he wrote, no wonder he has a lot of quotes.
Yeah. I mean, he's very prolific.
Yeah, who knew?
Born in 1900 and passed away in 1978. So like I said, I'm reading This Hill, This Valley, which he takes you through the year on their farm in Massachusetts, or maybe he's in Connecticut. I don't know. And he starts in March. So I've gotten through March and now I'm into April, and he's kind of, he lives in this valley. So there's a hill nearby.
Well, that makes sense. Hence the title. So
exactly.
You're reading it on a certain app that we thought might be helpful for our listeners.
I'm reading it on an app called Hoopla, Hoopla. And I know you and I both use Libby, yes, which is an app from the library. And with Libby, you check out, and 9 times out of 10, the book is a Kindle, and then you get bounced over to Amazon. You check out the Kindle book. With Hoopla, the books are always on the app, and it's still through the library. But sometimes when Libby doesn't have anything,
Hoopla does.
Then you can go over to Hoopla and they've got something.
Because a lot of his stuff is older. And I think the reason I didn't know about him is that, you know, he did a lot through the 60s and I was a little kid. So I think that's why I missed out.
Well, I was a little kid too.
Right. So I think, you know, that's why we aren't familiar with him. We're the wrong time period.
I will be more familiar when I finish This Hill, This Valley. And who knows, one of our future episodes, we're going to have a bunch of Hal Borland quotes. But in the meantime, we don't have a Hal Borland quote this week. I'll start us off with this quote. In the depth of winter, I finally learned that within me there lay an invincible summer. Albert Camus.
No, Albert Camus. Sorry, he was French.
Well, whatever.
I'm sorry. I had to read some of his books in French, and that was a long time ago. Anyway, I love the quote. It's wonderful. I should have warned you. Sorry, my bad.
That's okay. So our flower topic today is flowers that tell stories.
Yes, because our whole entire podcast is about storytelling, which everything just fit together. I mean, we just sort of like you pitched this idea of, hey, I know a pepper story. And I was like, I know a pepper story. And then the next thing we knew, we started thinking about just stories as a theme, which this is the first time we've ever done this theme.
Yeah. And so I do like a good story around a plant. And if you have pass along plants, you automatically have a story.
And almost everybody does, right?
Yes. Yeah. I got Aunt Marjorie's asters, and there's a whole story around those that I've told before. But I remembered a story around a plant that Elizabeth Lawrence, the Southern garden writer in Charlotte, North Carolina, had, that she had passed on to Alan Bush, who we both know.
Yes.
In 1982, which is about a year before she had health issues and was had to sell her home and garden and move to a retirement village thing. Anyway, he talked about her giving him the Oxford orphanage flower. And he wrote about that and how when he found out about Miss Lawrence, as I'll call her, he just knew he had to go visit her before she ever left her garden, because he was in North Carolina at the time. And he wrote a wonderful story about the visit, which unfortunately was on a website called the Human Flower Project.
Oh.
And Dee, I think that website is gone.
That is tragic, because that was one of the best websites. Okay, so we should just talk about it for a second. The Human Flower Project was kind of a blog, but not really. It was the most amazing. I'm so sad to hear it's gone. It started back when people were first blogging.
I can't find it.
Did you look in the way back deal?
It's probably in the Wayback Machine somewhere, but I'm not very good at searching for that. So I read that story, and I bought an Oxford orphanage flower, and it's got like 3 different names. I bought it as Calameris pintifidia hortensis,
like pinata.
It's also known as Japanese aster.
Mm-hmm.
It has double white daisies, and mine did not survive, though it's hardy zone 3 to 9. It did not survive. And you got to wonder how a Japanese aster ended up at an Oxford orphanage in Oxford, North Carolina.
Yeah.
And somehow Elizabeth Lawrence got that flower, and she was very much the sleuth when it came to figuring out where all her plants came from and the stories behind them. She figured out where it came from.
Yeah.
But anyway, it was going to be like a nice story that, Alan Bush wrote about it. And then I went and got it. I bought it. I didn't get it from Elizabeth Lawrence. Though I do have in my garden a flower that I got from the Elizabeth Lawrence garden. But anyway, that's another story for another day.
I have a really quick story. And it also relates to asters. I have, and we've talked about it briefly before, Hella Lacey. I have Hella Lacey's aster, right? And it's a pass along plant. And I bring it up, one, because it's an aster, because there's a story behind it. Her husband, Alan Lacey, named it after her when he found it in his garden. And he was friends with my friend, Russell Studebaker, who was a horticulturist and garden writer in Tulsa area. And one time I went to visit Russell when I was up in Tulsa, and he gave me Hella Lacey, and he gave me the Carolina climbing aster. and I want to say a couple more plants, but those two have survived in my garden and done really, really well. And every year when I see Hella Lacey, I think about all of those people in my garden, and I feel like they're in the garden with me. So I think that's a great way to look at it. I will try my best to find that article in the Human Flower Project. I mean, I would have donated money to keep that website alive. It was fantastic.
It was. If you can find it in the Wayback Machine or whatever, let's include a link. So the other one we want to talk about is one that people can get today. And so our friend Judy Seaborn at Botanical Interest, she's a co-owner. You want to sell a marigold. Tell the story about what a marigold means to you, which she did.
Yep.
And then we're all over it. So Marigold Phyllis is the one, and you grew it last year.
Mm-hmm. It's a South African marigold. So it's not your typical marigold. It's big and boisterous and blousy. It bloomed all summer long, has great scented foliage if you like the scent of marigolds.
I do.
It's a little more refined than other marigolds, but it still has that scent. I wrote about it in my blog. I ended up giving you seeds because Judy ran out of seeds.
Well, she's got them right now. I looked online, and I don't want to get.
You should go buy them, people. They're really good.
Yes. And she writes about how when she was growing up in the San Jose, California area, she would go to the garden center with her mom, and they would buy these huge, big yellow marigolds. So when she found this variety, she named it Phyllis after her mother and after those trips to the garden center. So that is a wonderful story. And it just shows how the right flower, it just kind of imprints on you and just becomes almost part of your own family.
Yeah, I think that's very true. I think one of the reasons I like roses is because my grandmother had a climbing rose that I used to sit and read books under. So I think that has a lot to, and that's why we should have our children smell flowers, be in the garden with us, be gentle with them. I was also going to say that's an affiliate link. So if you guys go through our notes to their company through this link, we will get a small, tiny commission, which helps us keep this going because it costs money.
Yes.
Which is why I bet you it's why the Human Flower Project went away. I do.
Yeah, it could be. We're going to find it in the Wayback Machine. So if any of our listeners, Dee, have flower stories, I would love to hear them. And maybe
I would too.
We can showcase some of them in future episodes. So they just have to email us at the gardenangelist@gmail.com. We'll have a link to that email on our show notes. Tell us the story of flowers, because we're probably going to end up with a big wish list after that of all the flowers that we want to grow in our gardens.
Plus, they're good stories, and we love a good story.
That's right. So go with that next quote, Dee, so we can get on to vegetable stories.
Or pepper stories. Anyone who thinks gardening begins in the spring and ends in the fall is missing the best part of the whole year. For gardening begins in January with a dream. And that's by Josephine. And I don't know how to pronounce Josephine's last name, but I'm going to say Nuez. That's probably wrong.
Probably. And I remember looking.
Noise.
Yeah. I looked this all up last year and chased this quote down because it's really used a lot, and found it from her.
Found the actual quote instead of it just being on somebody's little picture.
That's right.
So, and we try really hard, people, to make sure we get the quote attributed to the right person. It takes some time sometimes. Okay. So peppers with stories. You go first.
Last week I teased that I had a pepper story. This one comes to us from Modern Farmer magazine or website. And there's a woman who wanted to find a source for, and you pronounce this for me and I forget. Pimo.
Okay, I've got to look at it again to see the actual word. They said it was Pollo d'Espelette. Pollo d'Espelette, because it's grown in France.
Yes.
Okay, explain that. All right.
Yeah. And so you can only really get this pepper from that region, because that's the way with wines, for example. And we find that a lot with peppers, that it's because it grows in that region. So around here, there's something called Decker melons, and you can't grow a Decker melon in Indianapolis. You have to grow it in Decker, Indiana, hence the name Decker melons. But anyway, right. So this woman, Chrissy, and I'm going to mispronounce her names, Skomenga. Chrissy.
Now we're both paranoid about mispronouncing things. Sorry.
Right. Well, she went to France, and there was a spice that comes from this pepper, this Pimo d'Espelette. I'm terrible with French. I can't even tell this story. There was a spice that you could only get from this region in France. And she worked in a restaurant in California, and she wanted to use that spice from that pepper, but they try to source stuff as locally as possible. And the only way to get that particular spice was to write to France and have them send it. So she got the seeds for that pepper, and now she's growing them in California and using them in the restaurant, making the spice from them, but they can't call it the Pimo d'Espelette, whatever it's called. I'm butchering this. They have to call it by, it's the Boonville Barn Collective is where
she's doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. So they call it
Pimo d'Espelette.
Pimo d'Espelette.
Yeah.
We totally butchered that.
It is. And we tried. We even went and looked up how to pronounce the name, but it doesn't matter. It's a pimento. That's the type of pepper it is. Let's just do it in as close to English as possible.
Right.
So it's a pimento pepper. It is grown in this area of France, which is why it's named what it is, of that area. Okay. So the point is, she brought it back here, and the spice, when we say it is a pepper spice, we're saying it, she takes the peppers and she dries them, crushes up the peppers, and that makes the spice. And she said they use it in almost everything that they make in her restaurant, right?
They do.
So now this is going to be this de Ville, which means of the village, pimento pepper. And so these are beautiful peppers, and you can actually get seeds for these as far as I know, but it's hard.
It is. And she's gone through a whole process to get these, and you can actually buy this. You can buy the California version online.
So there you go. If you want to buy the California version online, we will link to this article, and then you guys can go look it up. And I'm sorry we butchered this. We just did the best we could. Now on to our next pepper story, which is a lot easier.
Yeah, you tell this one because we can pronounce all the names in this one. Go for it.
Thank God. Okay, so this is from New Mexico Magazine, and I actually bought this issue of the magazine, so I knew about the story back in September 2020 because I went to visit Santa Fe, and in September they do their entire issue of New Mexico Magazine about chili peppers because it's so important to New Mexico's economy and tourism, et cetera, et cetera. So it's the mystery of Big Jim. It is worth going to read. The short version is Jim, and I got to look up Jim's full name. Right. There's the picture of him. Here we go. Jim Wagner. I can pronounce that. Jim Wagner. He owns Big Jim Farms, and he, along with New Mexico University, created the Big Jim pepper. He had the Big Jim pepper first. They tried to go and isolate what it was that made the Big Jim pepper special. I've grown the Big Jim pepper. I can't tell you how many times. And now the new one, the one that actually is supposed to taste exactly like it tastes, is the Numex, Numex, after New Mexico University, Big Jim pepper. And I've grown that one, and it's fabulous. There is something about this pepper. It is not too hot. It is not too mild. It is just right, and it's great big, and you can stuff it, or you can chop it up into things. And I actually used it and Cubanelles in a really good, it was a pork roast dish I made the other day. Big, green chili verde. So anyway, really great pepper, but people had, selected for it. So they had made it very,
they had diluted the strain, I would say.
That's a good way to put it, Carol. They diluted the strain. So now they say they're quite snobbish about it. They're really, really happy about the whole thing. And the company, the farm, his wife, Jo. So this is Jimmy Little, who is the son of the namesake, and his wife, Jo, stand by the legacy version. And so there's two versions of it. They're on the market. You can grow whichever one you want. It's a fabulous pepper. It's a great story. And there's much more to it than what I just said. How's that, Carol?
That is pretty good. We will say that the way that they recovered the lost version is they found some seeds that had been stored in 1975 in a cold storage facility at Colorado State. And so these seed banks are really important sometimes to recapture what was lost through, poor breeding.
I think
the
the Rutgers tomato was the same thing. It had been diluted so much over the years there's another famous story about, stand up the real Rutgers tomato. And I honestly think they found the seeds in a seed bank there too, because pepper and tomato seeds last a long time.
They do.
They don't die quickly. So that is so cool. Now, do you want to talk about Tabasco very quickly?
I was just going to say Tabasco peppers sauce is another pepper that is kind of dependent on the region. You can really only get Tabasco from the peppers that are grown on Avery Island off the coast of Louisiana.
Mm-hmm. And it's been grown there for 5 generations.
I know. So they probably protect their source pretty well too. They don't want to mess that thing up.
And this all comes down to another thing we haven't really talked about, but we kind of hinted at, and that's terroir. And terroir means the land where stuff is grown, which is why France is so protective of their wines, and they won't label their wine according to grapes. They label it according to the area where they're grown. So a Burgundy wine is not a grape, it's an area. And when I first started drinking wine, I didn't understand that for a long time. Italy does the same thing. Portugal does it partly that way. And so that's an interesting aspect to this. And according to the Tabasco deal, and you looked this up, it's built on a salt dome, this area that they grow the peppers. So there might be a reason why those peppers taste the way they do in that sauce.
But I'll tell you, it's good marketing to say that the original can only come out of this particular ground, this particular region.
Brilliant. And it's the same thing with... I'm trying to think of Chimayo. Well, Chimayo peppers. Chimayo peppers are named after the Chimayo region. And last year I got plants when I was in Santa Fe, because we try to go to Santa Fe a couple times a year. And Ellen said, they say you can't grow these anywhere but in Chimayo Valley. And I was like, yeah, you can. And she goes, I know. We both started laughing. So the point is, you can grow them other places, but they aren't really technically Chimayo peppers or Decker melons.
Yes. So,
okay, onto our bookshelf. Oh, wait a minute. I'm supposed to do the quote, aren't I?
This is my quote.
Oh, it's your turn. I got so excited about peppers because I love peppers.
I know you love peppers.
Okay, go ahead.
How can those who do not garden, who have no lot in the great fraternity of those who watch the changing year as it affects the earth and its growth, how can they keep warm their hearts in winter? Francis King.
Love this quote. It is so true. Okay, so
we're kind of snobbish about being gardeners, aren't we?
We are, and I don't care. We work hard. We get to be snobby about it. Okay, so on the bookshelf is a book by our good friend, Mary Kate Mackey, and her co-author, Kathleen N. Brenzel. I'm sure it's Brenzel. Okay, and it's called The Healthy Garden, Simple Steps for a Greener World. And I preface this by saying she's our friend, and she is our friend. You couldn't meet a kinder person than Mary Kate, in my opinion.
I agree.
But she's also a very fine writer.
I agree.
Very fine writer. She teaches writing and just super smart. And I love to listen to her teach. She's a very good teacher. So this book was sent to us by her publisher. And it was stuck on a slow boat from somewhere. Was it from China?
Yeah, it was stuck in the cargo ship.
Slow boat. It was stuck on a cargo ship for months, and we've been waiting for it to come out forever.
Yeah, I think the original publishing date was November the 23rd. I got my copy on Saturday. Very excited. Opened it right up. This is a gorgeous book, and it's very well done. We both give it the big thumbs up.
Yes, we do. And I like this book probably better than any gardening book I've read lately. I'm going to tell you that much right now. I have just skimmed the surface of it because all I had was a PDF, and it's really hard, in my opinion, to read a PDF. But so there's 3 segments to it. There's Healthy Garden, where you learn how to garden sustainably, but no preachiness. It's just super nice, good information, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Part 2 is Healthy You, which is where you see how your garden supports your own well-being. And included with that is growing vegetables and stuff. So it's got a design component, and it's also got vegetable gardening in it. And then in part 3, it's Healthy Planet. And you'll see how people, I'm taking this from what she wrote, you'll see how people like you have joined with others to put their garden knowledge to work for the health of their communities and the growing world beyond. Because what happens as a gardener, you start out doing it for yourself usually, but then you start to care about the whole environment. And I love many things about this book.
Well, one of the things I really like the book is I remember 2 summers ago, she asked me for like a quote for the book, and I just whip something off and send it. So of course I like that I have a quote in there, but she profiles a lot of gardeners, and we probably know 2/3 of them, but people who put to practice some of the things that she talks about in the Healthy Garden. And so they're just wonderful stories of great gardeners that you can emulate. And I love that part of it too.
And some of them are designers, so you can learn design tips. Usually books have one type of focus, right? They usually are like, okay, this is a garden design book, or this is a how-to book,
or this is a vegetable book.
This is a vegetable book. And this one has it all. And not only that, it has beautiful pictures.
Beautiful.
Of the gardens they've designed, people they've designed them for. The pictures are scrumptious. And I don't know if I've ever read a book by this publisher before, but they did a good job on the book.
Yeah, the publisher is Abrams.
Okay, yeah, Abrams, which I don't know that I've ever had a book from Abrams before. So I wanted to just tell you one little piece of it to show you how it's not preachy, but it has good information. And the information is still very up to date, even though it was stuck on a slow boat from China. So it's talking about natives and how natives are important to your garden, which now we've all realized that that's probably true. And then she says, but what if you want both natives and non-natives? A 6-year study conducted by the University of York, the UK Centre for Ecology and Hydrology, and the Royal Horticulture Society has shown that a mix of natives and non-natives in a garden actually provides stronger support for wildlife, specifically pollinators. Take that, people who think you can only do one thing. Okay, so then she said there's no reason there shouldn't be the same true in the United States. And then she says, and this is where the example is, and I thought it was a good example because I actually do grow these plants. For instance, after a native penstemon like Penstemon digitalis or Penstemon cerulatus has flowered, a nearby hybrid penstemon, such as Penstemon Red Riding Hood or Penstemon Dark Towers, which is the finest penstemon in my garden, can not only brighten your border for an extended period of time, but also give pollinators a wider array of nutrient sources to prolong their season. Also, plants that originate in Europe support honeybees, which are not native to the United States. So the study concluded that a balance of non-native and native plants may help provide a home for the widest array of insects in our garden. I loved that.
I did too. I did love that. And I love what she wrote on the back. I mean, I would pick up this book. I'm like, yeah, I'm buying that.
What'd she write?
Part gardening guide, part call to action. The Healthy Garden combines practical advice for starting and maintaining a garden with a rare view into how home gardening builds resilience, happiness, and community.
I would say this is we always tell you guys what we think about books. This is one of the few books that I would say run, don't walk to get it, because you're planning your garden for next spring anyway. And January is a great time to read about gardening. And
yes. And even if you're experienced gardeners like Dee and I,
yeah,
you can always learn something. There's another part in there. She talks about trying out, ground covers.
Yeah.
And I think that's really good advice. Before you plant half a bed with a ground cover, try it, see what it's going to do before you invest in the whole thing.
A lot of ground covers do not like the middle of the United States. A lot of them don't. And I can't tell you how much money I've spent on ground covers. And so people, and in my garden coaching, I get a lot of questions about ground covers between stepping stones because it is so doggone charming.
It is. It's so, and we see that in all those British gardening shows. Oh yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
See that. It's beautiful.
Woolly thyme will not grow here worth a darn. So don't put woolly thyme between your pathways. I mean, there are some things that'll work, but no plant really likes to be stepped on. So you have to be very conscientious about what you pick out. That's a brilliant piece, but that's just one way to use ground covers. There are lots and lots of ways to use them and what might work. And I will say that there is some leaning toward the Pacific Northwest and California in this book, but not all of it, because I just read one section, which was about a Wisconsin gardener. So you can still get information from it. You might not specifically grow some of the plants, but a lot of it's design information in that section. And I thought, it works anywhere.
Yeah, she profiles gardeners literally from coast to coast because I see some of our friends that are in the Washington, D.C. area. Right. Yeah, Wisconsin, all over the place. So that is The Healthy Garden, Simple Steps for a Greener World by Kathleen N. Brenzel and Mary Kate Mackey. Congratulations to them on a book that is wonderful and a great addition to any gardener's library.
Yeah, I think you could look at it for a long time, and I think it'll help you dream of new things.
Yes. And Mary Kate, like we said, is an excellent writer. So dive in.
So you ready for the next quote?
Hit it, Dee.
I pray this winter be gentle and kind, a season of rest from the wheel of the mind. John Geddes.
I like that.
I do too. So what's our dirt?
So the dirt is, the
dirt's short.
We didn't do much research on this. The dirt is short. So we're hearing rumors that the youngins who have gone all hog wild for all these foliage houseplants have decided that flowering houseplants are also very cool. So we're waiting for a big comeback for African violets. This is their year, Dee.
African violets. I don't think they're good enough. No offense to them, but I don't think they're educated enough gardeners yet to grow African violets. They're not the easiest plant to grow.
Well, I think that the point is that everybody's saying, hey, you got to keep them interested because leaves are nice, but they only last so, give them a little bit more.
Well, they're boring.
To go for.
If you don't have any flowers at all, after a while, a palette of pure green is not enough for human beings to be excited. Plus, you don't have to do that much to regular houseplants for the most part. Yeah. They just sit there.
Yeah. So bring on the flowering houseplant.
Which I'm writing a post right now for my blog about my indoor flower garden. So maybe it'll just be, maybe it'll go viral. Ha ha.
Ha 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 ha. Yeah, I could.
Doubt it.
Aim it towards the young ones who are looking for, what would they do an online search?
You know what?
Something that flowers.
You know what? I gave up a long time ago trying to make my posts go viral. I could care less.
Yeah. I just write whatever I want. Too. Stupid stuff a lot of the time. Okay. We have rabbit holes.
And they're good ones.
They are. So I don't turn on my TV very often, but the other day I started watching Hidden Villages with Penelope Keith.
I've seen it
on BritBox, and you're so cute. So many fun little villages and different festivals and things. Mm-hmm. So the last episode I watched, she went to Cumbria and she went to a little town called Cartmel where they make something called sticky toffee. Cartmel sticky toffee. And I guess it's pretty famous in Great Britain.
And guess what? The restaurant is in French. You can do this one.
L'Enclume.
Good job.
Well, that was the restaurant we talked about several episodes ago from CBS Saturday Morning, where he went to this little out of the way English 2-star Michelin restaurant. Well, it turns out it's in Cartmel in Cumbria. And so she had a segment on him and he was showing his greenhouses and talking about how they tried to source food as local as possible. So they grow all their produce.
Yeah, he was the one that made those little delicate, beautiful things. And he has a tasting menu. And that was a cool one.
So my microgreens, that was my growing thing. I sprinkled them on some soup last night.
Good for you. I think that's awesome. You know what? It is fancy. I went to a restaurant in Oklahoma City and I noticed that right up next to the bar, they had microgreens growing. And that was because they sprinkle them on soups and stuff. Radish microgreens are quite good.
This is what this was. It was the jazzy mix from Botanical Interest. And it really, I'm not going to say that it overpowered the soup, but it's just nice. It's nice.
It just added a certain je ne sais quoi.
Yeah, there you go. Why don't you tell us what rabbit hole you went down?
Okay, so this might not seem garden related, but it is. I visited my dermatologist last week, and for the second time, I had a precancerous place on my face. This is in spite of wearing sunscreen, and I always have. That's why I don't, my face doesn't get that tanned. So this time it was on my cheek. The first time it was on my nose, and she had to freeze it off. Then I saw where a hockey fan who is studying to be a doctor saw a cancerous mole on the back of Brian Hamilton's neck. And she held up her phone. She typed on her notes program, all in red in great big type, turned it sideways, banged. She was right behind them. She banged on the window. He turned around and looked, and it said, I think that mole on the back of your neck is cancerous and you should go see your doctor. Well, he did, and it was. So we're going to link to that story because it was interesting.
That is.
And so this is a PSA for all the gardeners out there. Go see your dermatologist once a year and have a mole check, because we're in the sun a lot. A lot of us are of a certain age where we start to see sun damage. And even though we wear sunscreen, we usually sweat it off, especially on our faces. And it is a heck of a lot easier to have a place frozen on your cheek and have a little tiny deal that comes off, a little scab, than to have it, become skin cancer. She probably saved that man's life because it was the type of cancer that will kill you, because there's different types.
Well, I've heard of that happening at various like football games and stuff where somebody's sitting behind somebody and sees something and, they turn out to be a doctor. And so they tap them on the shoulder and say, you need to get that checked out.
Right. So that's an important thing to note. And that's my PSA, my little rabbit hole.
Very good. All right, let's go down to our garden commissions.
You go first.
I didn't forget this time. So last week I said I was going to get my hyacinth bulbs out, and I don't know. I didn't. So I'm going to do it. I'll probably do it today. And I'm also going to work on a big seed order because I do not want my favorite varieties to be sold out. So I'll start a botanical interest, buy a bunch of seeds, and then what they don't have, I don't know if I really need, but I'll end up going to another site or two because nobody has everything. That's my garden commission.
No, nobody has everything. Should we talk about our seed orders next week? I think
Dee, we can.
That would be a good topic. And then we could talk about starting seeds after that. Okay. So
that's a tease.
That's what that is. All right. I'm enjoying my open amaryllis blooms, and I'm taking down my Christmas decorations. So the amaryllis blooms get pride of place in the house. So maybe it was good that they bloomed after Christmas.
That's true.
And the other bit is the days are getting longer and it's almost time to start seeds. So get out your seed catalogs and start, look at your orders, because I think this is going to be a big seed year.
I hope it is. Anyway, we want to thank you for listening to The Garden Angelus. If you like our podcast, please tell your friends about us and also hit the subscribe button so you don't miss anything.
And if you listen to Apple Podcasts, we'd love a 5-star review that helps us get noticed by others. Could you also share our podcast with your gardening friends? It's still the best way to get the word out there.
Yes, and be sure and check out our show notes for links for more information about today's topics, plus links to our own websites. And if you want to help support us, use the affiliate links. If you buy something after clicking through on them, we're in a small commission and it costs you nothing.
It was lovely to chat with all of you over the Garden Gate today. Bye until next week.
Bye, everyone.